Hey folks, let's talk about the problem that you are having in astrology. It's an age-old problem. So you've been studying for a while and you know about the signs and the planets and the houses, you know about transits, and it all seems to you to be pretty clear until you actually look at a chart. And then it's a cluster. And everything is connected to everything else. And you understand the pieces, but you don't understand the whole. I used to have this problem, but at the time I had this problem, I wasn't yet doing therapeutic work with clients. So I would try to do these reports. So let's say the person had Sun in Scorpio in house 7. I would write a report and I'd put Sun in Scorpio means this. And the next paragraph would have Sun in 7 means this. It was very compartmentalized and separate because I did not know back then how to put it all together. But there was something else. I was trying to read the whole chart, which, as I recognize now, is not something that, well, in my opinion, is not something that is the most useful thing to do because the chart does not end. So back then I was trying to do a rendering of a whole chart and to put all of these planets and signs and houses aspects together. But of course it wasn't being put together. It was just being described in a kind of singular kind of way. Yeah. So back then I was trying to read a whole chart. Fast forward many years later, I'm now doing therapeutic work. So the issue that many of you are having is that you haven't defined a way of going into the chart. There is no intent, there is no focus, and there is no reason why you're going into a chart. You're going into a chart to interpret the whole chart, but there's no kind of focus. Now, as someone who does therapeutic work with clients, in the sense that I'm helping clients to understand where they are now, how to go forward, they have, when they come to me, a set of very specific challenges and experiences. Now, that becomes the starting point of how I go into any chart. So what I'm saying is that sometimes it has to do with your method of wanting to do everything at once. There is no end to chart factors. There is no end to the connections between things. There is no end to it. So it's useful from the get-go to sort of establish an intent, a reason why, a focus for going into a natal chart. So in therapeutic work, we already have a reason and a focus for going into the chart. But what this does is to establish the person, right? It establishes the person as the focal point. So the chart is only sensible in relation to a person, and the person and their life experience is the unifying factor for what the chart has to sort of present. So the chart only makes sense in the context of someone's life experiences. So in therapeutic work, it kind of becomes easier because there is a reason, and the person and their life experiences become the glue. The person becomes the thing that allows us to sort of piece together the very kind of disparate parts of a chart. So the person becomes the kind of glue. And that's really, really important if you're intending to synthesize a chart. Chart synthesis revolves around a person. It doesn't really fundamentally revolve around a chart, which may sound sort of counterintuitive to astrologers, but being able to piece things together sort of revolves around the person for whom, or the person to whom the chart belongs. So from the get-go, we're not taught that the chart makes sense in relation to a person. And that kind of thinking sort of infects the way that we practice as astrologers. So from the get-go, we want to do this sort of full chart reading, full chart interpretation without referencing the person who the chart belongs to. Yeah. So I frequent some forums on the internet, some astrology forums, and a lot of them are sort of filled with people who know astrology, who sort of are more interested in getting the chart right. So someone will post up their chart and share something, and then people will kind of chime in, and the people who chime in are basically kind of wanting to just guess and sort of wanting to feel like what they have contributed is actually accurate. Yes? If someone shares their chart and wants to know, for example, about their finances and career, people jump in immediately and are starting to kind of just say, well, you have so-and-so on the second house cusp, your midheaven is so-and-so, and so-and-so planet is in the 10th house, and they go for it. But they have not asked the person, well, what do you want to do for your career? How are you making money right now? What have your challenges and experiences been? And then that would become the basis for them to make even more sense of the patterns that are being described and shown symbolically in the chart. So we have this kind of embedded praxis in astrology, unfortunately, of not wanting to reference the person that the chart belongs to. So it's very interesting how that sort of infects the way that people begin to study astrology. They go, first of all, to the theory. That's important. You have to know your theory and get into what the things actually mean. But we're not encouraged to kind of go and look to see how the astrology matches up with people's real life experience. So that is sort of the thing. So we think that we come in, we know all the astrology, and we are sort of prevented from putting it all together because we don't have a context. Context in astrology is crucial. So the way that we're taught is a way that tends to be sometimes devoid of context. And people who are beginning to study astrology, they don't know that they need to put the chart together in a certain kind of a context. That context is critical in their capacity to really understand and assemble chart meanings. So having a context, having a focus, an intent, a line of inquiry is how you create meaning and how you're able to synthesize different chart factors. But equally important is this idea of pattern recognition. Astrology is really about being able to recognize patterns that are based on the essential and fundamental grammar of astrology. So it's important to be fluent in what the sort of fundamental grammar is to be able to put patterns together. Yes? Anything that's really, really important in a chart is going to be said in different ways. The same message will be said in slightly different ways, involving a kind of interchange between broad factors. So for example, let's use my chart. I have major oppositions between planets in the 5th house and the 11th house. My ascendant is in Aquarius and my descendant is in Leo. So that major axis there, the ascendant-descendant axis, is an interchange between Aquarius and Leo. I also have the North Node in Aquarius and obviously my South Node in Leo. So what we have, therefore, in 3 different ways is an interchange between Sun, Leo, 5th house factors and Uranus, Aquarius, 11th house factors. So we see that happening there. So for me, the dynamics between Leo and Aquarius will feature quite prominently in my life. So let's take someone else's chart that I'm thinking of. This person has Scorpio in the 4th house. I think the Sun in Scorpio is in house 4. But this person has the moon in the 8th house, and what's more is that the moon is opposing Pluto. So we see, therefore, this sort of exchange between moon Cancer 4th house factors and Pluto Scorpio 8th house factor. So we want to understand in this person's psyche and life how those repeating factors are being lived out and played out. So it's about recognizing the patterns that are inherent in the chart. So I was in a forum recently and someone was sharing their chart and their challenges. They were saying that they wanted to do a variety of things, but they kind of felt that they had to sort of just focus on one thing. And we're talking about career here, that this person had the natural urge to sort of want to do a variety of things, but they were feeling like, you know what, settle down, get focused, just focus on one thing at a time. The person put their chart up, and of course, everyone was chiming in with their opinions, and she was basically asking, in a sense, for some kind of career advice based on what she had there in her chart. And everybody jumped in and they said, you know what, look at your midheaven, look at your second house, look at your sixth house. And I looked, and it was immediately obvious to me what her issue was, because this young lady had 5 planets in the third house, a 5-planet stellium in the third house. She had the sun in Sagittarius. So she's basically sort of wired with this mutable energy, and all of that mutable energy is focused in a mutable house. I also noticed that on her 6th house cusp was also mutable energy. The sun was conjunct Mercury, and of course Mercury brings with it the tones of Gemini and Virgo, and Gemini's need for a variety of experience. And that was focused in Sagittarius, again, a mutable sign that seeks broadness of experience. So this person was not, in effect, wired to sort of neglect the parts of her that needed a variety of experience and broadness of experience. Again, Sagittarius Sun Mercury focused in the third house, the Gemini house, and also, of course, having that stellium there, including the sun and the moon in the third house. So obviously somebody who needs to sort of be seeking variety of experience and broadness of experience. Now, her dilemma was symbolically sort of shown with this Capricorn moon conjunct Saturn in Capricorn. On the one hand, she wants this broadness of experience, but she also needs to have a sort of focus and a kind of structure. Capricorn, Saturn needs that. So she is having to dance between these two parts of herself and perhaps find a way to harmonize them, meaning that she needs to perhaps find a container, a kind of Saturnian structure in which she can incorporate a variety of experiences and a broadness of experience. So that I could see that very easily by just a cursory look at this person's chart. I don't do free readings like that, but I will go and see what persons are saying. So just by a cursory look, I was able to see sort of what her dilemma was. So that's what I mean by being able to recognize patterns. That central to synthesizing a chart is to understand patterns. But importantly was the starting point that this young lady said, look, I am having this problem. I need to have a variety of experiences, but I'm feeling pressured to sort of be an adult and settle down. Yes, so it was prompted by that lens. So my being able to respond in that kind of way was prompted by the fact that I had this lens of, okay, what does she want to do? She's having this problem. And I was able to see the chart by looking through a sort of defined lens. So in that example, we see the importance of just going back to basics. Recognizing patterns is predicated upon having a strong grasp of the fundamentals. So in that example, I was able to see just by looking and appreciating what mutable energy wants to do. What does Gemini want to do? What does the third house counterpart want to do? What does Mercury want to do? What does Sagittarius want to do? So it's like just appreciating what those fundamentals are. Getting the basics in astrology is central to how you now put patterns together based on those fundamentals. So if you're having a problem synthesizing, Consider your method. Do you have focus and intent and a context for the chart that you're going into? Also, the importance of practicing and being fluent in the fundamentals of the grammar of astrology, because if you're fluent in the fundamentals, it means that you get how to put the patterns together. So it's not just about learning and understanding things separately, but begin to practice now how it is that things interchange with each other. Look at the chart and see how certain themes are coming about because of an interchange between different matrices. So for example, I spoke about the moon Cancer matrix, the moon Cancer 4th house matrix. So begin to see how these factors are interacting and dancing with each other. Look at that. Put that cap on to see if you can begin to recognize patterns and how aspects now support the sign, house, planet patterns. All right, folks, that's it from me. Subscribe for more astro content, perspectives, and discussions. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, talk soon. Bye.